Hello there, Pursuing Freedom friends. This is your host, Erin
Mhm.
Bradley, and thanks for being with us today. I'm super excited today to introduce my friend, Adrienne Green. Adrienne has quite the story to share with you, and we'll give a little bit of backstory, but I'll let Adrienne share her own story. But what I love about her is that not only did she build and scale a very successful real estate business and team that she was later able to sell, which is unbelievable, at a very young age with three young kids. She and her husband are financially independent and currently traveling the world. We're recording this as she's coming in from Medellin, Colombia. And her husband, Harley Green, was actually on the podcast a couple weeks ago. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to his interview, I would recommend you do so, because what's fascinating about their story is how they leveraged virtual assistants in order to scale their real estate business and team. And then ultimately, how they went on to develop their own VA sourcing company to support real estate professionals in finding skilled and amazing virtual assistants to help you in any level of your business scale and create that path to true independence and freedom. And as real estate investors, they've gone on to do the same in their real estate investing business, which has allowed them to treat their real estate investments like a true business. And this is something that Adrienne is so passionate about that she's now coaching others on how to do the same with your investing portfolio. So whether you are a real estate agent, a mortgage lender, a real estate investor, Adrienne has done it all. She is a wealth of knowledge. She is a shining light of the motto of Pursuing Freedom, which is that the goal is to build a life you don't need a vacation from. And I could not be more honored or thrilled to have her with us today, because I'm so excited for her to share her story and hopefully inspire everyone listening to think bigger, because everything is available and it's possible and it's ours for the creating and designing. So with no further ado, Adrienne, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, that was quite the intro. Thank you so much for having me. And like you said, I do hope that in our conversation today, we can help inspire some people to help create a life they don't need a vacation from.
Awesome. So bring us back a little bit. Talk us through maybe the cliff notes of how you found yourself in real estate investing, selling real estate, and now as you are doing extended stays all over the world with your kids. It's such an incredible and inspiring story.
Sure. So I am very open with the fact that I did not have some genius plan when we got started, right? Some people do, and they've got this great plan and they follow and execute it. Kudos to them. I definitely fell into all of this. So we started first with real estate investing, and that's what got me into the real estate world first. And it was really that we bought a house for ourselves, and after a few months we never went in the basement, and I was like, it's got its own door, it's already like plumbed, we could put in a kitchenette there. Why don't we do that and rent it out? So that was the extent of our thought, and that's what really got me started. So I was an investor before I was ever an agent. And we went from renting out our basement to buying a few local investment properties. And then it was in 2018 when I decided, hey, for our investing business, it really makes sense for me to get my license myself. And you know how that goes, right? You get a license to do things yourself, and you quickly go down the rabbit hole of, I'm going to be the real estate agent for everyone, and having a full business. So that was kind of the start to it all.
I love that. So when you made the leap, were you already in another W-2 job when you started investing? And was there a point at which the real estate investing allowed you to leave a W-2, or what was the career prior to investing in real estate?
Great question. So prior to the real estate investing, I was a high school math teacher. So I had a background in business and finance, and then I didn't love being at a desk all day. So I got my teaching credential and I started teaching high school math. And renting out the basement, which was a whopping $1,000 a month when we first started, was enough. Obviously it wasn't what I was making as a teacher, and yet it was enough to help with our bills that I could stop being a teacher full-time in public school and transition to other things. So our house was on acreage, and so we actually opened a hobby farm at the time. And so I went from teaching to having this basement rental, doing real estate investing. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was taking care of all the animals, milking the goats, collecting the eggs, growing the garden, all of those things.
Dang. So, okay, that's an interesting backstory that I did not realize. I did not know this part about you, Adrienne. So, learning something new every day. Now, what happened after you start the real estate investing journey? where were you with your portfolio when you started serving clients?
Right. So at that time, we had 3 or 4 rentals, I would say. And so we went, and that's when I got my license. And really, after that is when it started exploding because, when you focus more time and energy on something, what you focus on expands. And so by working in real estate, in addition to investing in real estate, it grew and prospered. We got more properties. We expanded from investing only locally to also investing long distance. And then as a realtor, of course, I helped people with their primary residences. And yet I also was uniquely positioned to help them with investment properties as well.
And is your portfolio today primarily residential, single families, or did you start moving into multifamily, commercial?
So we have kind of found that our niche is single family residential. We do have a mix of short-term rentals and long-term rentals in a couple different markets at this point. And that's one thing I'd say, you know, there are so many ways to invest in real estate, and we have tried and done different strategies. Like we're going to do the value add, like a burr, you might say, right? Or fix and flip. We've also bought rent ready, and there are a lot of things. And I feel like there's really an investing strategy for everyone. For us personally, we have found that we do well with single family homes, both short term and long term. We'll do light value add. Like I said, we've tried the heavier value add, and it's okay for us personally. It's not worth the stress.
Got it. And so before we keep going on how you've been able to build this portfolio in different markets and leverage virtual assistants, which later became another business for you guys, talk us through what it looked like when you first started to experience a pop in your real estate business. How quickly did you start to enlist the help of others versus how long did you stay solopreneur, juggling so many
Right.
balls? And did you ever experience feeling maxed out, or did you go into it strategically right out of the gates that you were going to scale?
Kind of like getting into real estate investing, I did not have a great grand plan. And all these things have just evolved along the way. So I am definitely an example of, I guess, kind of just winging it and learning as you go. And the thing is being open to that evolution and that improvement. So I got my license in 2018 and I was solo real estate agent and doing pretty well because I was in Northern Virginia at the time. We had a pretty high priced, median sales price there. So doing a dozen properties a year, I could make 100 grand, which was, pretty nice. And so we were there for, I did, half of 2018, 2019, and then in most of 2020. And then with COVID and everything, we decided to leave Northern Virginia. So in 2020, in November 2020, we moved from Northern Virginia to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Part of that was we had achieved enough financial freedom from our investing so far that we were somewhat location independent and we just wanted to leave Northern Virginia. Part of it was Chattanooga was a great market for real estate investing. And so I knew only one person there and they were a real estate agent. So I was looking at completely relaunching my business as an agent in a brand new market right there in January 2021. That is when I started using leverage. So that's when I realized I was going from a market where the median purchase price was maybe 650,000 to a market where the median purchase price was like 300,000. And I did the math and I was like, well, I'm going to have to do a whole lot more deals to make the money I want to make. And I knew that if I had to do all of the paperwork that goes into a real estate transaction, there was plus grow my business in a brand new market where I knew no one. I didn't have friends from high school. I didn't have former coworkers there. I knew that I was going to have to hustle and I was going to have to bring on a virtual assistant to use that leverage so that they could do all the busy work and I could focus on the marketing and all those high level tasks that I would need to do to really get this business rocking and rolling.
So can we dig our teeth into this? Because even as a mortgage lender, and I've had virtual assistants in the past, but not for my mortgage business, only for my coaching and podcasts and things like that. And I know that there's a lot of people listening that probably feel the way I do, which is, where do I begin? I don't know what to outsource. It overwhelms me. I think so many of us, especially in real estate, we think of our business as very hands-on, right? And so
Right.
when I think about when I enlisted the help of assistants in my business, which is critical to break the ceiling of your personal capacity and grow your business, you simply cannot, nor would you want to, grow to the level that some people have the capacity to do without getting help. And so I
Right.
rave and rave all about having support, having leverage, scaling your business, et cetera. But I, even in my own experience, I had a lot of boots on the ground. So there was people that were setting up my events for me, or doing pop by gifts, or picking up my closing gifts, or things like that. And so I sometimes get a little overwhelmed at the idea of outsourcing virtually. So can you give us some examples of the types of activities in your business that you were able to enlist the help of a VA for?
Sure, I will do that, and I'll walk through from where we started to where we grew to. So the first thing that I outsourced when I brought on that virtual assistant was the contract to close process. And I all I had right then was like a Google worksheet checklist of here's every step in the process. Like, there's some that are out there that you can they're templates of that, right? And I took a template and I just customized it to myself and to my market and my business. These are the things that I do. And what I liked about bringing on a virtual assistant versus some people will pay someone to do, a TC to do contract to close, is my virtual assistant did it my way. And they did a whole lot more than a TC does. So, like one of the things you mentioned is the closing gifts. Well, we always did closing gifts that they could order online and have shipped to the person's house. And so we were able to adapt what you typically think of an in-person assistant doing to something that a virtual assistant could do. Similarly, like cards, right? We would send cards after the initial consult call. We would send cards at various points in the process. And there are options where you can you can order the card online and have it mailed, right? And you can even have it, uh, you know, be your exact handwriting if you are. But we were able to use options like that where the virtual assistant was able to do everything. But we started with that contract to close process, and I just had a spreadsheet. And what I did is, as I did every step in the process, I made a video, right? You can use Loom. You could use Zoom if you have Zoom, and you just go in a personal meeting room, share your screen, and talk through what you're doing, right? And just record it. And so that's what I started with. And then the virtual assistant wrote up a procedure based on that video. I reviewed it and said, okay, yeah, that's right. Or, tweaked it if we needed to tweak it. And then the next transaction, she could do that step. And so we slowly added to her list using that process.
I love everything about this. I'm nerding out over here big time. It leads me to another question, which is that so many of the people I work with as real estate agents and mortgage lenders that are top producers, and they're desperately, desperately needing to scale. Was there an aspect to this where you sort of had to slow down in order to speed up? Because sometimes I look at people that are on the seesaw, right? We all know the roller coaster where our pipeline dries up, we turn the faucet on, we get business. Now we're drowning in our own success. Inevitably, we ask the universe to slow it down. It slows down. Now we feed the fear that this is not sustainable. Therefore, we can't hire help. And so there's a lot of mindset piece here around, number one, the fear of enlisting the help of others and then not knowing what to do, which you just addressed right there. There's also the fear of not having the time to do what you've just alluded to, which is creating the videos, creating the procedures. And so I met with a lot of resistance there where people say there's not enough hours in the day. So when is the appropriate time to plan this vision
Right.
out and then enlist the help?
Well, and you hit on a couple things there. So the first is, when I had my license in Tennessee and was really starting to build my new business there in January, and February is when I brought on that first virtual assistant as an executive assistant. So I did not have 7 deals a month in February, right? To keep her busy. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm going to guess I had like 3 closings in February, right? And so it was a little scary to bring her on that time because I was like, I'm committing to paying this person so she can feed her family this amount every month. And right now the numbers don't work. I had to lean in and have faith that if I worked the system and I gave her that busy work and I focused on the top 20% that would bring me more business, that it would pay off. And so it did help to give me a little more time that I brought her on before I truly needed her.
Amazing. Super important. And I think that, again, that's a mindset thing because you made a decision to thrive and then you made a plan on what that needed to look like. And then you executed and you invested ahead of profit, but it allowed you to create a profit that you probably wouldn't have been able to create by yourself. How did
No
you
way.
actually go about growing so quickly in a new market? Talk us through your sales and marketing strategy a little bit.
Right. So one of the things that helped a lot was I had in Northern Virginia a good friend who was a business coach. And so prior to me leaving Northern Virginia, she and I walked through and created a plan. And it was, I think the key parts here is thinking about like having a plan, right? Thinking, okay, I'm not going to be able to rely on the traditional business sources. So what am I going to do? And this is beginning of 2021 when we're not really doing in-person networking still or things like this. And so, and we really thought about where did I have an unfair advantage? And where I had an unfair advantage was dealing with real estate investors. And I was moving to a market that was great for investing. So I really built my entire business on working with real estate investors, most of whom were long distance. And so I benefited from the fact that real estate investing was very hot then. And I also leaned into my unfair advantage. And I had a plan and a system that I executed of connecting with these real estate investors online, right? Bigger Pockets, Facebook groups. I had a YouTube channel, right? In hindsight, I should have had it as a podcast as well, like you do, Erin. But, I did those things. And I also thought, what does a real estate investor need to feel comfortable investing here long distance? And how can I fill that void? So I networked with property managers. I networked with general contractors, and I made content about these people and advertised to potential investors like, hey, I've got the network you need. Let's get started. And when you buy this property, I'll connect you to these property managers. I'll connect you to these GCs, and we'll be an all-in-one shop for what you need.
So amazing, because that is literally the strategy that I teach in my book, is about building a tribe of trusted local service providers so that you
Mhm.
can have all the resources and not just focus on the transaction. Because I feel like we're in a market now, as we record this in 2024, where there are just a lot more, the consumers are more fickle. They're shopping agents, they're shopping lenders. And I've been telling people till I'm blue in the face, you've got to be more than just a transaction. You've got to be more than someone who can get them to the closing table, because that should be minimum standard. There needs to be
Right.
more value above and beyond what you get paid to do. And having that network is key, but it also helps you to expand your own database, because there's opportunities then if you're giving value to these other service providers and you're promoting them back to your consumers, that there might be enhanced reciprocity there, where I see a lot of real estate professionals frustrated by that lack of reciprocity. They build this vendor list, but then they don't go any
Right.
further than that. And there's more that we can be doing to collaborate with our peers and our colleagues that's going to
Mhm.
elevate through association. It's going to add more value to consumers, potentially cross-pollinate our databases, and be able to grow together. So I love that. All right, talk to me about what happened next. So you've got
Right.
the systems in place, the business starts to grow, but then it went on to evolve into a team that became saleable later, right?
Yes. So in 2021, that same year, like July or August, I was drowning in business. Even with a virtual assistant, I will say I was up until like 10 o'clock or later at night, and I am not a night owl. So that was rough for me, like just handling all the things that only I could do. And so that's when I walked into like, I was with KW, I walked into the team leader's office and said, I think I need to start a team. What does that look like? Because I can't do this number of transactions. I need to sleep. And so she kind of walked me through. And the thing is, I feel like something that helped me that is when I make a decision, I'm all in on it. And so, if you have that trait, I would say lean into it and take action quickly. And so, she said, you have to, make X, Y, and Z, these plans to put together to start a team. And I was like, okay. And I had it to her within the week. And then we were able to get going on the team. And with the team, so I started that team August 2021. I ended up selling it October 2023. And we only ever had virtual assistants as our support staff. And of course, we grew. Now, I want to note that, of course, it isn't this beautiful idyllic thing, right? There are pain points along the way. So, I'm starting this team in August. Well, my office is also switching at the time from dot loop to DocuSign, which you know how that goes, right? And so we're having to learn this whole new system that we hadn't really used before. And while I love DocuSign now, I will say it is not very user friendly at the beginning. And the virtual assistant I had left. She had family emergencies. And so while I'm trying to start a team and really expand my virtual assistants, you know, r- roster, having more, I also had to deal with this one. And even though we're big on procedures and everything like that, especially because she was my first one, there was a lot that was in her head, right? And so It was rocky, and there was still, a month or two of like me doing a lot of work and filling in these gaps as this happened to make it work. And yet, it's one of those things where if you always live your life in like a range of 4 to 6, yeah, things are never that wrong, and yet they're also never that great. And so that was maybe a time when it was a little chaotic, and I might have had more days that were like 1 or 2s, but we had to have those in order to have the days that are 10s as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I appreciate what you're saying there because I was going to ask you, that's an incredible trajectory to be starting this team in August of 21 and be selling it by October of 23. And I'm curious, what was one of the biggest challenges you faced? It sounds like you're pretty decisive. So maybe the fear block that a lot of people have doesn't hold you back as much as it can hold others back. But what were some of the mistakes or pitfalls you experienced that you would go back and do differently, maybe?
Well, great question. And I think the biggest challenge with the team overall, and if anybody has a team or is in a leadership position, you may feel this, is it's really tough to manage and lead people, right? It's really challenging to get people to be their best. And that applies to agents as well as to the VAs. And honestly, the agents are a little trickier to get them, to do their lead gen, to do all these things, right? And we provide the systems, and yet there's so many mental blocks or issues that get in the way where we can have the time blocking where we're all, we're in different places, we're all getting on, a Zoom call, we're putting our things on Meet, we've got the pre-programmed, scripts or things that we're going to say to people. Like I provided that support, and yet getting people to show up and do that is one example was tough, right? Getting those agents to do their part of being on the team was a challenge. And I think anybody who has a team can probably relate to that.
Yes, for sure. And I'm doing the math here, and I'm pretty sure your husband told me that your baby is 4, and that means that you were also starting to scale this business and build a team when your baby was roughly 1 years old. Is that right?
Yes. So our youngest was born March of 2020, right at the beginning of COVID. So yes, it was, but you know what I think of when I think of that is kind of like this Lucille Ball quote of like, if you want something done, ask a busy person to do it, right? It's like we had to get it done. And also like, well, my husband, we did have our rental income. He did have his own W-2 job at the time, until he started the virtual staffing business. I still felt like I needed to provide for my family, and having 3 kids that you feel like you need to provide for is big motivation.
Definitely. And I also think I was talking about this yesterday with a gal that has young kids, and she's kind of in that eye of the storm, if you will, where her business is booming, she's needing systems, needing to scale, et cetera. And I was telling her that if I look back to that season of my life, I for sure was running a breakneck pace with toddlers. And also, it created the experience of parenthood and young children created a burning desire to ensure that my business would become something that could fuel my life and not something that would be like the whale in the bathtub of my life with my life squished in around the edges because my priorities shifted. And so my
Right.
kids don't remember that season of my life where I feel like I was running with my hair on fire, working really long hours and long days. But by the time they got into the memory zone, we were now on our 6-month RV road trip, homeschooling the kids and doing all kinds of fun stuff. So I think it's important for people listening to know that if you're feeling out of balance, it doesn't need to be permanent. And if it's triggering a desperate desire for things to look different, then you've got to listen to that desperate desire and take the action necessary, even though you don't always have all the dots figured out or connected looking ahead. You just have to start taking those steps and letting it unfold, right?
Yes. And I think that, what you did and what I did is we realized, hey, we don't want to be like this forever. And yet the solution isn't just to quit now. It's to make a plan and execute a plan and realize the plan may take some time. And yet, the longer you take to build something to an extent, the more sturdy or strong or better it's going to be, right? We're not going to make something amazing in a week.
All this time, you've got your VAs going, Harley's building out the VA sourcing company. I assume you're simultaneously starting to leverage those VAs in your real estate investing portfolio. Now, talk to us about where you are today in helping others. Like, what was the evolution of systematizing your real estate investing business?
Right.
Did that happen overnight, or were you seeing the benefits of VAs in your sales business first and then implementing them into your investing business, or was it VAs in the investment business first and then realizing you can use them in your sales business?
So I definitely brought VAs in on my real estate business first, and then we later applied them to the real estate investing. And like a lot of real estate investors, we had busy like day jobs, right? Like my husband was W-2 and then starting Workogenics, and I was busy running the team, and so we had to fit real estate investing into the corners, right, into the edges, at least for until I sold the team. And as we did that, I was like, we have to be super efficient with this, right? Because again, if it's an evening or it's a Saturday or a Sunday, like I don't want to be writing a lease from scratch. I don't want to be figuring out how am I going to list this property. And so from the beginning, it was like, how can we have this be systemized? How can we make this once and never have to touch it again, right? And now, again, it was not perfect from the start and it didn't come from some bigger plan. It came from a very emotional place of, like I said, I don't want to have to touch this twice because that's taking away time from my family or other obligations that I have or having fun. And so we started having systems there. And that was helpful for when we brought on virtual assistants to help with the real estate investing because we already have a protocol or something to follow to some extent. Although we did still use that hack of we'll do it once, record a video, they write the procedure, and they do it later on. I really view like the systems for real estate investing in three parts. And the first is like that vision and mindset, which I think you do a lot of as well, Erin, in that so often people fall into this, like they'll fall into being an agent or a lender, and they don't really know where they want to go with it. So I think we need to start with like a 5-year plan of like, what do you want your life to be like? And then how can we use real estate investing as a tool to help you get there for starters?
Yeah. And so what does the program look like now? How are you supporting other investors and getting more organized and leveraging the VAs and so on?
I am in the beginning stages here of figuring out what exactly is going to be the most helpful for people to make for a first course. But in general, what I am doing is going to make an online course where these busy real estate investors, when they need, can pop in and take a course specific about what they want. So if it's vision, they can do that. If it's finances, right? Like if they need to, especially as an investor wants to scale, what they can do with finances for 1, 2, or 3 properties isn't going to cut it when they have 10 properties and need to keep those finances in order. Plus, if you don't have your finances in order as an investor, how are you going to get another loan, right? From the lending standpoint, Erin, that people have to have their finances situated well. They need to have their financial statements. They need to have everything like that. They need to have their depreciation noted in such a way that a lender can add it back into their income and everything like that. So we have the aspect of let's get your finances in order. And then finally, the operations, like where are you spending your time? Where can we leverage with technology? Where can we leverage with virtual assistants so that you're getting that time freedom and you're also getting the time you need to scale?
I love it. It's so amazing because I think so many people listening can relate to this idea of we get into this and we don't know how far ahead we can possibly see because I think our minds are limited to conjure up mostly based on what we've experienced to date, right? So it's a good pipe dream that we can only see so far with our dreams. And so we get into this business and initially we're just focused on figuring out how to get transactions. And so we get
Mhm.
there and then all of a sudden we have all these transactions and now we don't have the time freedom. And so it's so important for everyone listening, whether you're in a state where you may be thinking, I wish I had too much business to handle. But think about the fact that if you follow the plan, it's inevitable that the business will come. And when the
Mhm.
business comes and you're drowning in your own success, may not be the easiest time to put a new system together that's going to support that level of business better. And this is the interesting thing that comes back to when you started in Chattanooga, because you invested in the assistant before the volume was there. And I think that's the way it has to go because if you don't put the system in place first, it's essentially like building a house on a faulty foundation. You're going to throw stuff against the wall, see what sticks. Inevitably, you're going to have a business going, and all of a sudden, other parts of your life are starting to crumble because you built the house on the faulty foundation. And you have to sometimes take the house down to the studs, create a stronger
Right.
foundation, and then you build the skyscraper, but not until you've addressed the foundation. So I love that you shared so much wisdom in this conversation in terms of just having that vision, having the willingness to apply new principles, seeking out guidance, learning and having a plan, applying the plan, getting the results, and then continuing to evolve. I wrote open to the evolution. I love that. I think it's really important for all entrepreneurs to be open to the evolution and not gripping on to what we think we're supposed to be doing just because that's what used to work. But if it's not working
Right.
now, it's time to reevaluate and pivot. So thank you so
Mhm.
much. And Adrienne, if people want to find you, follow you, talk to you, get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
The best thing is to go to my website, adriennegreen.com. That's ADRIENNEGREEN.com. And there I have a freedom blueprint, which outlines the 10 key systems I think a real estate investor needs in place in their portfolio in order to be able to get time freedom, financial freedom, and to grow and scale. And it's a really simple download they can get there to help evaluate what you're doing well and where you need to spend your time.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much, Adrienne. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story. It's so unbelievably inspiring. And I hope the listeners are leaving this conversation ready to take some new action in their own life and business.
Thank you so much, Erin, for this opportunity. It's been great.
All right. To all my friends out there, I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in as always. And if you're enjoying this content and you haven't left that 5-star review, well, I'm going to have to slap your wrist because that is how we continue to attract amazing guests like Adrienne and help this content get found so more people can be on that journey to building life you don't need a vacation from. I love you. I'll see you next time.